All right, we're going. So it turns out I actually pressed record instead of stream. But now I have the stream going. Okay. Yeah, okay, so currently, well, I already have the word about the stream, so I'm not going to take time to do that. But currently, we do have a tornado warning currently ongoing for portions of Mississippi. The only towns that are currently in this tornado warning as of right now is Flowers and Flora, Mississippi. We also do have Redwood, but it is behind the rotation as of right now. Our rotation is probably actually further back here, so it is Redwood is still behind the rotation. But we are definitely seeing a really big tornado signature come out of this. I'm going to switch this to reflectivity. Actually, no, I'll keep it as velocity for now. But we definitely have some rotation ongoing for the towards the back there. But we have a large swath of winds. The radar site is to the southwest, by the way. So all these greens and blues are moving towards the radar site. This is all RFD. This is our pushing on the south side, the southern end, and is causing our inflow here, which is all in the reds, moving away from the radar site into the rotation and fueling that rotation there. All of this is moving in here and beginning to rotate in that little region there. We could definitely see a tornado come out of this. So if you do live in Flowers or Flora, Mississippi, please take shelter immediately. This is mainly tracking through mainly rural areas, but we could still see a tornado come out of this. Hopefully it stays in mainly rural areas. Pecker squid. Oh, we actually have a lot more other like extremely small towns here, like a couple buildings. So if you do live in this warning box here, please make sure you're taking shelter immediately. But what do you mean by pecker squid? I need to be enlightened by what that means. Just got a new correlation coefficient scan, still not indicating a tornado on the ground just yet. In fact, it does look... never mind, I can't say anything about the track of this just yet because we didn't get a new velocity scan. Okay, we got a new velocity scan. It is taking the warning path. For a second, based off of correlation, which was kind of stupid of me, I thought it was moving off to the northeast. Do you know who I am? Yeah, I know it's you, Ricky. Okay, yeah, so as of right now, still watching this tornado warning. We do have rotation. It is kind of weak, but all the ingredients for this rotation are there. We have a really strong RFD here, an outflow, which is causing a very strong inflow jet here into the velocity couplet where it's rotating. And both of these are extremely strong. The rotation, it's limited, but it's definitely there, especially with what we have pouring into this to support this rotation. This could definitely tighten up, and we could definitely see a tornado spin out of this. So if you do live in this warning box, if you do live in the towns of Flora and no longer Flowers, if you do live in the town of Flora, please get to shelter immediately. This is a dangerous situation. We could definitely see a tornado come out of this at any time. Still a radar indicated, and we don't see anything from our correlation coefficient. We don't see any debris that would indicate a tornado being on the ground. But yeah, we're just gonna sit here. We're gonna watch this. We're gonna see how this evolves as far as the tornado risk. Oh, and then I also finally have a boom arm, so I don't have to hold my microphone up to my chest for it to sound good. Yeah, okay. Still watching that rotation. I'm gonna wait for the next velocity scan, see how it evolves from there. But again, as I was saying, we definitely have the ingredients in place to support a tornado, especially in the short term of things. Not necessarily the environment itself. I mean, the environment itself, it's a little less conducive where we are for the tornado risk. But we could still see some rotation and the potential for a tornado. We're still watching that area for rotation. Again, the reds are moving away from the radar site, and the greens are and blues are moving towards the radar site. All of this is RFD, which is this kind of like a mini cold front. If you were to think about a tornado, this is what has always like kind of fascinated me, and kind of how I think of tornadoes. It's like a very small and localized surface low, where the tornado is right here, and we have a cold front that's draped down, and then we have a warm front, or stationary front in this case for a tornado, up north, with inflow being warm air advection, moving up northward and eastward or westward into the low pressure area, and then we have cold air advection and a cold front off to the west, and that's causing the area of rotation actually rotate. So I kind of like to think of tornadoes as mini surface low and mini surface low regions, if that makes sense. Surface low pressure. Still not seeing any sort of debris or correlation coefficient drop. We're not noticing anything that would indicate a tornado being on the ground. We still have rotation though. It does need a little bit more work if it wants to produce a tornado though. It does need to tighten up and strengthen a little bit. But we could definitely see a tornado come out of this, especially with the very strong RFD surge, which led to a mass response and it's heavily increased the inflow strength. We could definitely see that tighten up, no problem, and produce a tornado. So again, if you do live in the town of Flora, or if you live in this warning region in Mississippi, just to the north and northwest of Jackson, please get to shelter immediately. Again, a tornado could drop at any time with this storm. And then questions are heavily encouraged. So yeah, kind of just gonna sit here. We're gonna wait and see how reflectivity evolves. We got another severe thunderstorm warning for somewhere. Not sure where. I guess it's this one. Oh, it's way off in Canada. I hate Canada severe thunderstorm warnings. It doesn't predict, or tornado warnings either. It does not predict the path of the event. It only just like boxes out where it is without the motion or like where it's gonna move. So it's kind of goofy. Ooh. Okay, it does look like we may have a little bit of a correlation coefficient drop there, associated with some weaker end rotation. But we could definitely see a weak tornado currently on the ground, a small weak tornado. It is to the south of Russellville. Hopefully, it is not going to do any damage. There are definitely a couple buildings in this region. Hopefully everyone's taking shelter. If you do live in this warning box, please take shelter immediately. A tornado could currently be on the ground at this time. I'm not saying that it will definitely happen, but what would you do if hypothetically 17 different squad cars just parked right in your driveway and smashed down your door because they were informed of What? I don't know. I'd probably be arrested, I think, for something. For whatever, I guess. I don't know. Oh, pilot guy, nice to see you. How you doing? I currently have a tornado on the ground, it looks like. We do have a little bit of a correlation coefficient drop, and there may be debris being lofted, being picked up by the radar beam there. We do have rotation. It is a little bit more on the weaker side, but our ingredients are definitely in place to support rotation. So we could definitely very well see a tornado on the ground. I'll wait for the next correlation coefficient scan. You better have not reported me to the authorities. I do not want to be swatted. Okay, in the newest SPC outlook, the 10% tornado risk has continued to be maintained for eastern Texas into Louisiana. So we are still watching for the potential of a few tornadoes, some of which could definitely be strong. The ingredients are definitely in place for strong tornadoes. The risk for strong tornadoes may be more limited. But then tomorrow is really where it picks up. We have a moderate risk for tornadoes and damaging wind gusts. Or an MCV is probably going to lead to some pretty destructive damaging wind gusts. And the potential for a couple strong tornadoes. Yeah, the newest correlation coefficient scan doesn't show much, but does maybe indicate that there may be a little bit of debris being lofted into the atmosphere still. We may have seen a brief tornado. Hopefully it picks back up here. It's still very minor rotation, but it is right where you would expect your rotation to be, right along inflow and RFD, where they come together. So there still may be a little bit of debris being lofted into the atmosphere. Hopefully this was a brief tornado and is going to pick back up here. But it is moving outside of the warning box, it looks like. Okay, yeah, so we're still tracking this. I'm going to wait for the new correlation coefficient scan, but again, we definitely have at least a minor rotation going on for this storm. And potentially a little bit of debris being lofted. I'm going to wait for the new correlation scan to see if that goes away, but we may have just seen a brief tornado. Hopefully it wasn't all that powerful, because rotation was very weak. Hopefully it was not all that powerful, and hopefully it didn't really hit anything. But it does look like the RFD surge is probably going to push it, do a little curvature, and push it off to the northeast here. They're going to have to update that warning box here in a moment. Because we definitely have some really strong RFD. Severe thunderstorm warning was updated with 1-inch hail and 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. And they did remove that tornado possible signature, because rotation is kind of iffy. Okay, newest correlation coefficient scan. There still may be a little bit of debris fallout here, potentially. There may be a little bit of debris still in the air. Then there is still a little bit of rotation. It could also be just just a little bit of contamination because it is right along the leading edge, and there is hail for this region. It could definitely potentially be more contamination than actual debris, but I don't doubt that we saw a brief tornado back towards Russellville. I wonder how they'll change this tornado warning box. They may change it to look something probably more like this, or at least that's what I would do. So we're going to continue to sit here, see how this evolves. And questions are heavily encouraged, by the way. Okay, so the tornado warning was removed. I don't really see rotation. We still have what may try to develop into inflow, and we still do have a little bit of an RFD, but it needs some work if we need it to produce a tornado. They're not really like coming together to rotate. They're mainly just converging. And as far as correlation coefficient goes, I do think that this drop that we're seeing is likely contamination along the leading edge of the severe thunderstorm and the gust front, and the hail that is in this area. So I'm gonna go down here because this is where the main risk is developing. We also do have a couple of clustered supercells over here that do look like they are mostly elevated. This one does look like it may have a pretty powerful RFD, which may lead to a mass response and increase inflow quite substantially. And it does have a hook going. So I think this should be watched. However, I have noticed that the storm has had a hook for literally hours, and every single storm in this area has had a hook for basically hours, and I don't think any of them has been severe thunderstorm warned. I mean, sorry, tornado warned. So they may be more elevated. Let me check mesoanalysis to see where our surface cape is. No, the storms are definitely in an environment of some quite conducive surface cape. So these storms are probably surface based. But by the look of them, I'm kind of surprised that certain ones don't have a tornado possible signature on them. But these are some really robust supercells with some really nice hooks going for them. Especially this one. I am noticing again that we do have that RFD surge, which will likely lead to a mass response and heavily increased inflow, and we will probably get rotation develop around there here in a moment, potentially. But let's see how this storm has been tracking. Yeah, okay, so this is a relatively new event. This isn't like something that's been going on for hours. This RFD surge is relatively new. Hey, how's it going, Leo the Weather Nerd? We're watching this storm to the north of Austin. The more robust storm out of these, and the one that looks like it could develop some rotation here soon, especially with this newest RFD surge, which will likely increase inflow as a result, and we will likely see rotation develop around this area. But this definitely has a really nice hook going for it. So we could definitely see a tornado possible signature being added to this severe thunderstorm warning here in a moment. But other than that, a lot of these storms are exhibiting some really big hail. This one in particular is exhibiting 2.5-inch hail and 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts, likely as a result of the RFD surge there. This one's exhibiting 1-inch hail and 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts, but it also has a really nice hook. Just would need some work if it wants to produce a tornado. This one also has a nice hook. This one has a tornado possible signature, surprisingly, compared to the one further up north. So we will also watch this one. It does have a really nice hook. It is fairly robust, and it does look like it may be trying to develop some rotation here, but it will need work as far as inflow. But we'll watch that. And then we also have this other supercell that also has rotation, or not necessarily rotation. We do have an RFD, and we do have somewhat inflow, and we do have a really nice hook, but definitely not tornado warning worthy, but it's getting there. Ooh, this also has a really large and trailing outflow boundary, which will likely elevate this supercell off to the west. I don't see this supercell or anything that develops behind it really posing all that much of a risk for tornadoes, because it will be developing in a region of very lackluster surfacescape and a much cooler environment as a result of that outflow boundary from that one supercell. So it's choking off everything to the west of it. This outflow boundary here is this line of some slightly higher reflectivity there. When the outflow boundary, when a strong gust of wind from the outflow boundary picks up a lot of dust and lofts it into the air, that's how you get those that line. That's how you see the outflow boundary. But as a result, everything in here is much colder. So there's less surfacescape, less fuel at the surface to really support surface-based rotation, and overall a significantly lowered to potentially no tornado risk at all for this supercell in particular. It does have a hook and likely some elevated rotation, likely does have an elevated mesocyclone, but I doubt we will see too much of a tornado risk with that. But I'm going to continue to watch this supercell here. Does have an RFD, but it is not rotating. I think we would need more work from inflow. Much more work from inflow to get it to rotate. It's mainly just converging, and it's not really rotating. But we'll watch that, because I definitely think this storm here has some tornado potential. And it could definitely begin rotating. The ingredients are in place for it to begin rotating. By the way, we're looking at this cluster of supercells to the north of Austin. But yeah, definitely has a really strong RFD and decent inflow, but it's mainly kind of weak and it's kind of skinny. And if we were to get maybe a massive inflow surge as a result of this RFD surge, we could see rotation develop around here, and that could support a tornado. But it's not really rotating. If you understand what I'm saying, it's not really rotating, but it is trying to. But we did just get a tornado warning for someplace. for this storm, again, for Jackson, Mississippi, actually. Okay, I'm going to switch this over to velocity, and I'm going to switch this over to correlation coefficient to track if this touches down. It does look like we may have a little bit of a correlation coefficient drop with this storm, and some very decent rotation. We definitely have some really decent rotation there. We have a nice RFD, we have a nice inflow, and we have rotation here. This entire couplet is moving towards the Jackson, Mississippi radar site, so all of it is in the green. However, this area right here of slightly less inward pixels is actually moving outward, but because of the relative motion to the radar site, it doesn't appear to be, but that is rotation. And I'm going to wait for the next correlation coefficient drop, or next correlation coefficient scan, to see if that's really a correlation coefficient drop or not. However, we definitely have some pretty decent rotation, potentially correlation coefficient drop, and this is a tornado warning for Jackson, Mississippi. If you do live in Jackson, Mississippi, or anywhere in the surrounding area, please get to shelter immediately. We could potentially see a tornado on the ground as of right now, and we will see how this evolves over time, but this is potentially a dangerous situation, so definitely make sure you're getting to shelter immediately if you live in Jackson, Mississippi, or the surrounding regions, including Clinton, Pearl, Flowood, Richland, and Raymond, Mississippi. Please get to shelter immediately. This is a dangerous situation, and a tornado could drop from the storm at any time. And the environment is definitely conducive. The setup for the storm is definitely very conducive for the potential of a tornado, and we could very well see a tornado come out of the storm, and we may have one on the ground. I am gonna wait for the next correlation coefficient scan to see if there really is one. And it really does appear that there probably is a tornado currently on the ground. There's already notifications on Twitter and stuff about this. If you live in the affected region, there could potentially be a tornado on the ground if you live in the tornado warning area. This does include Jackson, Mississippi, and the Jackson, Mississippi, International Airport, including the surrounding regions of Flowood, Pearl, Richland, Clinton, and Raymond, Mississippi. Please get to shelter immediately. This is a very dangerous situation. This is likely tracking through heavily populated areas if a tornado is currently on the ground. Again, the environment is conducive of tornadoes and could definitely support a tornado at this time. Please get to shelter immediately if you live in the affected area. This is a dangerous situation. If you have questions, I will answer them regarding this tornado warning. If there are anything else, I will not answer them for the time being. But if you do live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. This is a dangerous situation. Tornado is potentially on the ground moving through populated areas. And I'm going to actually open up Twitter really quickly so I can watch to see if there's any incoming reports of a tornado being spotted. Or at least a wall cloud. But there could definitely be a tornado currently on the ground at this time. If you live in the tornado warning area, please get to shelter immediately. This is likely tracking through very populated areas. We can actually zoom in here, see how many buildings are actually. And yeah, this is definitely a very populated areas. Very populated areas. And there is still rotation. And on correlation coefficient, there may be a little bit of debris. We again could definitely see a tornado potentially on the ground at this time. If you do live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. Again, if you live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. A tornado could potentially be on the ground moving through populated areas. If you live in Jackson, Pearl, Richland, Clinton, Raymond, or are currently in the, Jackson, Mississippi International Airport, please get to shelter immediately, as there could potentially be a tornado on the ground as of right now. Questions are heavily encouraged regarding this tornado warning. But yeah, this is likely a dangerous situation currently ongoing. If you live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. If there isn't a tornado on the ground as of right now, we could see a tornado drop at any time with this tornado warning. So please get to shelter immediately, regardless if there is or isn't a tornado on the ground at this time. Again, a tornado could drop down at any time with this storm. Please get to shelter immediately if you live in the affected area. That does, again, include Raymond, Clinton, Richland, Pearl, and Jackson, Mississippi, as well as the Jackson, Mississippi International Airport, if that is the international airport. I'm going to wait for the next correlation coefficient scan to come out to see how it evolves, to see if it depicts a tornado being on the ground still or not. And I'll also wait to see if the tornado warning does, if the tornado warning does say observed, because again, it does look like we may have a little bit of a correlation coefficient drop, indicating that there may be debris being lofted into the atmosphere, and we do have rotation. It is quickly moving towards the radar site, so it is kind of hard to see, but all these stronger inbound pixels are moving rapidly towards the radar site. And all these green, darker green outbound pixels are actually moving away from the radar site, while the entire couplet is moving towards the radar site relative to the radar site itself. But if I were to switch to storm relative velocity, hopefully it will show it a little better. It kind of does, but storm relative velocity is kind of bad to look at. I wish it was better, because the storm relative velocity on what is it, radar scope is significantly better compared to the one on radar omega. I don't know why it's like that. But again, if you do live in the affected area, again, that does include Jackson, Mississippi, Raymond, Clinton, Pearl, Flowood, and Richland, Mississippi. Please get to shelter immediately. This is a dangerous situation. If there isn't a tornado currently on the ground at this time, we could see one drop at any time with this storm. Yes, okay. Newest correlation coefficient scan clearly indicates a tornado on the ground at this time. This area of much lower correlation coefficient is very indicative of a tornado being on the ground. That indicates that debris is being lofted into the atmosphere. And with the rotation on top of it, we probably see a tornado on the ground at this time. If you live in Raymond, please get to shelter immediately. This tornado is minutes away. And likely seconds away too as well. There's likely a tornado on the ground moving into the Raymond region. If you live in Raymond, Mississippi, please get to shelter immediately. If you know anyone that may live in Raymond, Mississippi, please inform them of this event. Please urge them to get to shelter immediately. There is likely a tornado on the ground moving through heavily populated areas and will likely move through Raymond, Mississippi here. Again, if you live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. That does include Raymond, most importantly, as the first one in the way. And then you have Clinton, Jackson, Flowood, Pearl, and Richland, Mississippi. Again, there is a tornado currently on the ground, most likely moving through heavily populated areas, moving directly towards Raymond, Mississippi. Again, if you live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. Most importantly, Raymond, Mississippi. If you know anyone that lives in this warning area, again, most importantly, Raymond, Mississippi, please urge them to get to shelter immediately. This is a very dangerous situation that is currently ongoing. Again, a tornado is likely on the ground at this point. I'm waiting to see if we get any reports and if we get an observed signature on this tornado warning. Okay, we just got that observed tornado signature on the tornado warning here. So there has been a tornado that has been confirmed moving through heavily populated areas. Radar confirmed tornado. and then it also says observed, so there's likely people that have sent in reports for this tornado warning. So again, if you do live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. This is a very dangerous situation. Tornado is currently on the ground, moving through heavily populated areas. If you live in the affected area, or you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please urge them to get to shelter immediately, as a tornado currently tracks through very populated areas of western, just to the west of Jackson, Mississippi. Again, if you live in the warning box, that does include Raymond, Clinton, Jackson, Pearl, Richland, and Flowood, Mississippi, as well as the Jackson, Mississippi International Airport. Please get to shelter immediately. And if you know anyone that is currently in that region, please urge them to get to shelter immediately. This is a very dangerous situation that is currently ongoing. Hopefully, we do not see a massive correlation coefficient drop over Raymond in this next radar scan. I'm going to wait for the next radar scan, but again, if you do live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. And it does look like we probably did get that deeper correlation coefficient thing over Raymond here. There is likely, again, debris currently being lofted into the atmosphere. It does look like south to central Raymond likely did get impacted by this tornado, and rotation is continuing. Again, a tornado is currently on the ground, moving through heavily populated areas. That does include Raymond, Mississippi, Clinton, Jackson, Flowood, Pearl, and Richland, as well as the Jackson, Mississippi International Airport. Again, if you do live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. This is a very dangerous situation, and a radar-confirmed and spotter-confirmed tornado has been indicated by this time. Again, very dangerous situation currently ongoing. And if you guys have questions, I will answer them regarding this tornado warning. Hopefully everyone is getting to shelter. And again, if you haven't already and you live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. And if you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please urge them to get to shelter immediately. Again, very dangerous situation currently ongoing for Jackson, Mississippi. Tornado still currently ongoing. I'm going to wait for the next correlation coefficient scan, see how it evolves from there. However, it does look like Raymond, Mississippi potentially just got hit dead on by this tornado. If you do know anyone that lives in Raymond, Mississippi to the west of Jackson, Mississippi, please make sure to check up on them, because Raymond definitely looks like it may have taken a direct impact by this tornado. And if you haven't already, if you live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. A tornado is continuing through very populated areas and is approaching Jackson, Mississippi. If you live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. This is a very dangerous situation. Again, radar confirmed and spotter confirmed. I don't know if it's spotter confirmed, but it is radar confirmed tornado. Yeah, so a tornado has been confirmed on the ground at this time. Again, still moving through heavily populated areas, and this will likely move into the Jackson, Mississippi metropolitan area in the next couple of minutes. Again, if you do live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. This is a very dangerous situation, and a tornado is currently on the ground, moving through very populated areas. If you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please get them to shelter immediately. And if you yourself live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. Does it look like we still have at least a little bit of a correlation coefficient drop? Hopefully this will pick up here soon, because this is getting very close to the Jackson, Mississippi metropolitan area. And again, a tornado is continuing on the ground through very populated areas. It does again look like either central to southern Raymond, Mississippi did take a direct impact from this tornado. So if you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please make sure to check up on them. That is not the type of thing I expected to see on this live stream tonight. I did not expect to watch a town get hit by a tornado. But it's always a possibility, especially with these high caliber events. Again, if you do know anyone that lives in the affected area, then please urge them to get to shelter. If you know anyone that lives in Raymond, please be sure to check up on them. I'll wait to see if there's reports of any damage done in Raymond, and I'll notify the stream if there is. But it doesn't look very good for Raymond. It looks like it may have taken a direct impact. But again, this tornado warning does continue for the surrounding regions for Clinton, Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, Richland, Mississippi, Pearl, Mississippi, and Flowood, Mississippi, around the Jackson, Mississippi area. That does include the Jackson, Mississippi International Airport, and this is beginning to impinge the Jackson, Mississippi metropolitan area, which is not good whatsoever, especially with the history that this tornado warning has had. We need this to lift soon, because this is going to move into a much more dangerous area next couple of minutes. Again, if you do live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. This is a very dangerous situation currently ongoing with the tornado on the ground, moving through very populated areas around Jackson, Mississippi. And if you know anyone that lives in the affected areas, please get them, do whatever you can to get them to shelter. Again, this is not good. But yeah, again, if you do live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. Again, very dangerous situation currently ongoing. Tornado still tracking through very populated areas. Is about to track through the Jackson, Mississippi metropolitan area. And with the history that this tornado warning has had, there is probably still a tornado on the ground. It does look like we still have that correlation coefficient drop. This is a little bit more of an older scan. We still definitely have rotation with entire velocity couplet moving towards the radar site relative to the radar site, with these darker outbound pixels, but still being green, moving away from the radar site, and the much brighter greens moving towards the radar site. We have rotation, but it is moving towards the radar site relative to the radar. But we still have what seems to be some debris. I'm going to wait for the next correlation coefficient drop, because this is an old scan, but there is probably still a tornado on the ground at this time. Again, if you do live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. If you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please urge them to get to shelter immediately, as a tornado could still be on the ground tracking through very populated areas to the west of Jackson, Mississippi. Hopefully this lifts soon, because this does not look good unless it lifts. Still a radar confirmed tornado. Yeah, it does look like the tornado is probably still on the ground. It is much harder to tell now. Probably going to switch this over to reflectivity. Yeah, we definitely still have a hook here. At least a small hook. But because of how fast this entire storm is moving, it's making it hard for a strong inflow to really develop. It is mostly outflow dominated, but we are probably still seeing a tornado currently on the ground with this. Again, it is much harder to tell, especially with the news correlation coefficient scan. But there is still a tornado warning that is currently ongoing for Jackson, Mississippi. Hopefully, if the tornado is on the ground, hopefully it lifts soon, because this is not looking good if it wants to stay on the ground. Again, if you do live in the affected area, that does include Jackson, Mississippi, Clinton, Mississippi, Richland, Mississippi, Pearl, Mississippi, Flowood, Mississippi, as well as the Jackson, Mississippi International Airport. Please get to shelter immediately. This is a very dangerous situation. There's likely a tornado probably still on the ground. We will wait to see how this tornado warning does evolve, and it was extended. Again, it does still continue for Jackson, Mississippi, Pearl, Mississippi, Richland, Mississippi, and Flowood, Mississippi, as well as the Jackson, Mississippi International Airport. This was downgraded to a radar indicated tornado. It doesn't have its observed signature anymore. However, we definitely still have our rotation still ongoing. It is, again, much harder to tell because of how it's moving towards the radar site really quickly relative to the radar site. But it's almost impossible to tell if there's debris on being lofted into the atmosphere on correlation coefficient. Hopefully this tornado has lifted, because I don't see anything that would really be apparent indicating a tornado on the ground. Hopefully it has lifted before this moves into populated areas, but we still have the tornado warning that is still continued for Jackson, Mississippi, Flowood, Mississippi, Pearl, Mississippi, and Richland, Mississippi, as well as the Jackson, Mississippi International Airport. Again, a tornado could still be produced by the storm even if it did lift, but this is still passing through some very populated areas. So if you do live in the affected area, or if you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please get to shelter and urge them to get to shelter. And then again, if you know anyone that lives in Raymond, Mississippi, please make sure to check up on them, because it does look like they may have taken a direct hit. Again, tornado warning still continues for Jackson, Mississippi, Pearl, Mississippi, Richland, Mississippi, and Flowood, Mississippi, as well as the Jackson, Mississippi International Airport. If you do live in the affected areas, please get to shelter immediately. And if you know anyone that lives in the affected areas, please urge them to get to shelter immediately. This is a very dangerous situation. Again, tornado warning continues for Jackson, Mississippi, and the surrounding regions. Again, there is no indication of a tornado on the ground, especially with these current radar scans. It does look like we still have our rotation, but there is no indicator of debris being lofted into the atmosphere. Probably going to switch this over. Yeah. Honestly, I'm seeing the overall tornado risk slowly decrease with this storm. However, it does have some tornado potential that does continue with this. Again, if you do live in Jackson, Mississippi, Pearl, Mississippi, Richland, or Flowood, Mississippi, as well as in the Jackson, Mississippi International Airport, please get to shelter immediately as the tornado warning continues. I'm going to wait for the next velocity scan here. And if that looks bad, then I'll switch where velocity is over to correlation coefficient, and I'll switch where reflectivity is over to velocity. Just need to see how our rotation evolves. But again, tornado warning continues for Jackson, Mississippi, Pearl, Mississippi, Flowood, and Richland, Mississippi. Actually, it does look like we may be developing some more rotation further up to the north here. We could definitely see that possible, because we definitely could see a really massive and bulky RFD, as well as inflow that's going to wrap around that further back into the storm, and it may be trying to develop rotation further off to the west. But all of this is moving relative to the radar site, so likely don't see any sort of inflow with that. It's likely not rotation, but it will be something to watch. But as far as the tornado warning for Jackson, Mississippi, definitely still make sure you're in your safe place until this tornado warning is expired. Again, Jackson, Mississippi, Pearl, Richland, and Flowood, Mississippi, as well as the Jackson, Mississippi International Airport, as well as whatever this airport is further up to the north. Please get to shelter immediately, as a tornado could drop at any time with this storm. and questions are heavily encouraged. Hey, Mr. Storm, thank you for tuning in. But yeah, again, questions are heavily encouraged. I'm gonna wait to see how this tornado warning evolves. I don't see that much rotation anymore. I'm gonna switch this over to storm relative storm relative velocity. I can also actually switch it to 4-panel. It will be really difficult to see. And it's gonna be quite laggy, but honestly it helps me see significantly better. And then we also have that warning sound that just went off, so there was likely another tornado warning issued for some place. Okay, we do have another tornado warning. Let me switch us over to actual velocity here. Man, okay. I am gonna make this 2-panel so it's easier for you guys to see. But we currently have 2 tornado warnings currently ongoing, and we have 8 severe thunderstorm warnings. But we do have a tornado warning for mainly rural areas of Texas. There's actually no towns currently in the path of this. If they were to continue the tornado warning, it would likely push Fisher and Florine into the warning region. But this is mainly rural areas, so that's definitely a good sign. But if you do live in the warning box area, definitely make sure you're taking shelter regardless, because we again do have a tornado warning for portions of eastern Texas here. Actually, no, this is Louisiana. But we have some messy rotation, but it is definitely quite strong and quite apparent. I'm going to switch this over to velocity over here and switch this to correlation coefficient. It actually does look like we probably have a tornado currently on the ground. This does look like it is mainly tracking through rural areas, but there are probably a couple small towns in this path. Like we have Raton here with literally basically nothing, it appears. And then you have Claire. It does have a couple houses, a couple buildings. So if you do live in the affected area, definitely make sure you are taking shelter. It is mainly small towns and it is mainly rural areas, but make sure you're taking shelter if you live in the affected area. It does look like a tornado is probably on the ground with this, indicated by our correlation coefficient, which may be indicating some debris being lofted into the atmosphere. Hopefully you guys can hear me, by the way. I don't know how my audio sounds. Please let me know how my audio sounds. And if I don't get a response, it's probably bad. Yeah, that rotation is definitely picking up. A very decent rotation, very strong, very tight rotation. It's actually a little bit more broad, but it is definitely pretty strong. And there are a couple areas where correlation coefficient has dropped, so there may be at least a small and brief tornado currently on the ground. It's not really apparent. I'll wait for the new correlation coefficient scan though to see how this develops. See if any rotation or any if any debris is being lofted in the atmosphere. I'm gonna turn up my microphone all the way because I don't know if anyone can actually hear me. I'd rather it be blasting in your guys' ear than not being able to be heard at all. How does that sound on stream? That sounds pretty good. I'll keep it like this. I'll see what you guys think. But again, tornado warning is currently still ongoing for portions of eastern Texas. The rotation has actually moved mainly into Louisiana now. If you do live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. This is tracking through mainly rural areas, but we could definitely see a tornado come out of this. May have seen at least a brief, maybe a weak tornado come out of this. And there's still no like big indicator of a tornado. Yeah, but we could still see a tornado come out of this. This is again mainly rural areas. Do we still have the tornado warning that's being continued for Mississippi? We do. We do have that tornado warning that did continue. Actually, no. I think this is the same one. Alright, so we're going to watch this tornado warning, see how it evolves from here. Again, it does look like we may be getting a correlation coefficient drop here with our pretty tight rotation right in the center there. Yeah, there may be a tornado currently on the ground to the southwest and west of Clare. Again, if you do live in the affected area, please take shelter immediately. And if you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please urge them to get to shelter immediately. But Clare currently has a tornado warning, and there may be a tornado currently on the ground potentially. Got another severe thunderstorm warning. And another severe thunderstorm warning. Again, tornado warning continues for mainly rural areas of far western Louisiana. If you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please urge them to get to shelter immediately. If you live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately, as a tornado is potentially on the ground, indicated by our correlation coefficient there, indicating that there may be a little bit of debris being lofted. But this is mainly rural areas of Texas. Louisiana. It's not Texas, but it is right on the border of Texas, but it is in Louisiana. The very small towns that are included, though, are Clare, Toro, Mississippi, or Louisiana, Raton, Gandy, Sandal, and Dress. Again, if you do live in the affected area, if you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please urge them to get to shelter immediately, as there could potentially be a tornado on the ground at this time, lofting at least a little bit of debris there. I want to see what our next correlation coefficient scan says. And then again, as a reminder, questions are heavily encouraged. I'm trying to see something here. Give me a moment. I'm trying to... Okay. Don't worry about that. I was just trying to make sure of something. But we are back. And again, if you guys have questions, they're heavily encouraged. Doesn't look like we have a correlation coefficient drop, at least anymore. We probably saw a brief tornado there. So that may have been, like, potentially two tornadoes already. And the tornado potential isn't ending either right now. We are still going to see tornado potential continue until late afternoon hours. But we did just see it. We still see a tornado warning for Clare, Raton, mainly rural areas of extreme western Louisiana. If you do live in the affected area, or if you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please get them to shelter immediately. This is interesting. Looks like we may have another area of rotation further down to the south. And we also actually may have 2 correlation coefficient drops. But we could definitely see potentially 2 areas of rotation trying to develop along that region there, which may indicate potentially twin tornadoes. And there's probably 2 tornadoes on the ground actually. Especially the one for Claire. Hopefully Claire did not take a direct impact by a tornado, but the correlation coefficient drop is right on Claire. So again, if you do live in the affected area, a tornado is still possible, regardless of if it's moving through mainly rural areas of western Louisiana or not. Again, a tornado is still possible with this tornado warning, and there may actually be 2 tornadoes on the ground with this storm. So again, if you do live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. This is a very dangerous situation for mainly rural areas of western Louisiana. If you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please urge them to get to shelter immediately. But hopefully this hopefully these potentially 2 tornadoes stay in mostly rural areas. Do not move into any heavily populated areas. It seems like the sound for severe thunderstorms is getting more and more frequent, while the severe thunderstorm count is dropping. But if you guys have questions, please ask. I heavily encourage questions, especially for this type of situation. Trying to see if there's any updates from this region or the tornado that just tracked through Raymond, Mississippi. If you guys do know anyone that lives in Raymond, Mississippi, to the west of Jackson, please make sure to check up on them, because it does look like a tornado potentially tracked directly through town to the central and southern Raymond, Mississippi. Even regardless, it was still tracking through very, very populated areas. But again, tornado warning continues for mainly rural areas of western Louisiana here. If you live in the affected area, please take shelter immediately, as a tornado could potentially drop at any time with this storm. We've had a couple of areas where it does look like we may have had a tornado. In fact, we may have potentially had twin tornadoes. We may have actually had like 2 tornadoes with this severe thunderstorm. This tornado warning. If you do know anyone that lives in the affected area, please urge them to get to shelter. And if you live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately, as a tornado could drop at any time with this storm. It's kind of hard to tell though, because it does look like it is mainly becoming more of a damaging wind gust risk. I don't see rotation. Well, there is rotation, especially with the radar site being to the southwest, and all of this is moving away from the radar site, and all of this is moving towards the radar site. So at minimum, there is a little bit of rotation along that area here, probably maximized around here. However, it does look like it is mostly convergence and probably not really rotating all that much. It does look like we do have lower end correlation coefficient spotty areas in that tornado warning area, but it is also an area of less reflectivity. So it could be contamination, but it could also maybe be debris fallout. This is most definitely correlation coefficient contamination. I do not see that being a tornado whatsoever. Sorry, I'm tired. Questions are heavily encouraged still. How long have we been live? Been live for who knows. Let's see. I don't. Okay, we've been live for a little bit over an hour already. The peak concurrent viewers were up to 16 at some point. That's the highest it's ever been. But if you guys have questions, please ask. I am open to questions. I'm going to sit here, watch this tornado warning, see how it evolves. I doubt there's really going to be too much of a reason to continue this tornado warning in the next couple minutes. We do have what looks to be mainly outflow, mainly convergence. It doesn't look like this is any sort of rotation. Then it also does look like we may have a little bit of debris fallout. Either debris fallout, contamination, or just an area of low reflectivity, because it could very well be an area of lower reflectivity, as you see here. All the rain would be back in this area, so there's not really much for the radar site to pick up on. So it's probably either contamination or potentially a little bit of debris fallout. However, the majority of the debris fallout would, if there is debris that was lofted, it would likely fall somewhere in this not that, that's a weird circle, somewhere in this vicinity, most likely this area. And we don't really see that much of a correlation coefficient drop. There's likely not a tornado on the ground at this time. We still see that tornado warning continued. It is becoming mostly outflow dominant though, so I doubt we're going to see too much of a risk for a tornado with this. However, if it does what I think it's going to do, potentially, this is likely going to turn into RFD and push eastward, while it will lead to a mass response where it increases an insane amount of inflow and may try to develop some rotation along the convergence there. We'll watch this though, because there's no like actual indicator of rotation just yet, at least. However, as of right now, I do not see much of a reason to continue this tornado warning. So it will likely be expired here in the next couple of minutes. I would be genuinely shocked if this tornado warning is continued into another area. The only reason I see they may do it is for that little area of convergence there that may try to rotate, but there's no actual like rotation indicator there just yet. It is still radar indicated though. We'll watch this. This does look a little concerning, even if it is mainly convergence. Or not convergence, but just winds moving side by side and not really rotating. But there is an area of much lower correlation that may be a little bit of debris there. It's honestly quite hard to tell though. But we'll see how this evolves. Again, the tornado warning does continue for this region, for mainly rural areas of extreme western Louisiana. There's not really any notable towns or big towns that are really in the path of this right now. But tornado warning does continue for this region. If you know anyone that lives in the warning area, please make sure that they get to shelter. If you live in the warning area, please make sure that you're getting to shelter, as we could see a tornado potentially spin up out of this. But overall, it does look like that risk may be getting more and more unlikely, but we'll see. And then again, as previously mentioned, the questions are heavily encouraged. See the emojis. After this stream, which I probably won't do for too much longer, because I do have school tomorrow, and I do want to save the majority of my energy for the risk tomorrow. Probably not gonna go for too much longer. Let's move away from this tornado warning for now. I don't really think they're gonna really continue that. We're gonna switch back to one panel, and we're going to go to reflectivity here. So for the Jackson, Mississippi area, still a majority of a severe damaging wind threat, with the potential for some massive hail along that line there. We could definitely see some massive hailstones track through Mississippi with this MCS. And we do have the potential for some tornadoes to potentially spin up along this line. And I wouldn't be surprised if this severe thunderstorm warning... Okay, well, it doesn't have the tornado possible signature, but with the environment and how it's moving, we could definitely see a possibility of a tornado spinning up along this line alongside the massive hailstones, which is currently upwards of 1.25 inches or 60 miles per hour. However, especially with this area here, how it's getting up to some widespread 70 dBz, I think we could definitely see potentially upwards of maybe approaching 2-inch hail with that region in particular. But this is mainly damaging wind and massive hail risk, with the potential for some tornadoes to spin up along that line. We do have a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings. We do have one to the east of Shreveport. Shreveport. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but this is a hail risk with 1-inch hail and 60 mile per hour wind gusts, with hardly any sort of rotation ongoing, so we're probably not going to see too much of a tornado risk with that in the near term. We do have this storm, though, that does have that tornado warning still ongoing. It does have a tornado possible signature up towards the Shreveport radar. Did have a hook there, but it is now looking like it is becoming more of a damaging wind gust risk. And if anything, we may get the potential for some spin up and a tornado to develop around that area, because that will be where the RFD that's pushing down, pushing out from the south, and the inflow come together. But we will watch that for the next couple of minutes. We also do have a couple of special weather statements for mainly some small hail and some strong damaging wind gusts. And then we also do have a cluster of some more isolated and pretty robust storms that are developing some pretty clear outflow boundaries to the south. That is tracking either through Austin or to the west of Austin. These do have the potential for tornadoes, especially with when the low-level jet slowly increases over the next couple of hours across this area. That will provide this region with much more shear, and the fuel is definitely going to be in place to support the potential of tornadoes with some of these storms. However, it does look like our main tornado risk is probably going to be for whatever storms are in this area. I'm actually kind of surprised. Okay, actually, never mind. I was going to say something about the tornado watch. I am going to watch this, though. This does look to be the most interesting storm. Yeah, you can see a combination of our reflectivity and velocity, how you have all those winds pushing in the RFD, and then you also have a small sector of some strong winds moving up to the north away from the radar site, which is down to the south, by the way. Again, reds are moving away from the radar site, and greens are moving towards the radar site. And the radar site is to the southeast a little bit, but mainly to the east. So a lot of our winds are moving away from the radar site, while all of this is moving towards the radar site. So it does look like our winds are mostly coming together. However, up to the north here, where it kind of goes from perpendicular to the radar site to more parallel to the radar site, this is where we could see the potential for some spin up, because that's where your RFD and that inflow comes together, and that's where you get that hook, and that's where we could see rotation develop a tornado in the next couple of minutes. We will watch to see how it goes. The severe thunderstorm warning does still have a tornado possible signature. However, based on how it looks right now, this is definitely not enough to warrant a tornado warning. But it does look like we may be trying to get a couple areas trying to spin up along that area, or along that line. Hopefully this does track through mainly rural areas, though. But if you guys have questions, now is the time to ask them. Now is the time to ask any questions if you have them. I heavily encourage questions, by the way. I'm not opposed to questions in any way. Yeah, newest reflectivity scan still indicating that Boeing segment to the south of the main precipitation core, indicating that we definitely have a pretty juicy, pretty beefy, and pretty strong low-level jet. Not low-level jet, but well, we do have a pretty decent low-level jet, but we do have mainly RFD being indicated by this. But that will likely support stronger inflow into this notch region. We could see a tornado develop around this area. We will watch velocity again. Greens are moving towards the radar site, and red is moving away from the radar site. However, because the radar site is to the south-southeast, mainly off to the east, all these greens are moving towards the radar site, and then all the reds are moving away from the radar site. So it does look like it is mainly convergence. However, up to the north, you can see how they kind of run more parallel to each other than perpendicular to each other further down to the south. And that's where we're watching for rotation. But as of right now, it's still definitely not enough to warrant a tornado watch. Tornado warning. Definitely not enough to warrant a tornado warning right now. But we'll watch. We'll see how it develops from here. Man, am I about to pass out. I am tired. Oh, and by the way, today is the 1-year anniversary for Project Gladiator. Do have a couple things on the way. I am working on a time-lapse video where I'm compiling my footage from the tornado chase on April 2nd, 2023, or 2024, just a couple days ago. I am working on that, and then I also do plan on working on a video that may be more so dedicated to the anniversary and upcoming plans for Project Gladiator, as well as a video that's going to be detailing and going over what Project Gladiator is, because some people may not know what Project Gladiator is, so I do want to make sure that a lot of people that watch this channel do know what it is. So I do have that on its way. But it is most likely going to be delayed. It is most definitely going to be delayed at least a little bit, especially due to the severe thunderstorms that are currently ongoing and that are possible for tomorrow, and through the later half of this week as well. Later half of the week it may be more clear, but it's definitely going to be delayed as a result, but it will definitely be working its way out. So definitely make sure you're keeping an eye out for it if you are interested. Speaking of Project Gladiator and information on Project Gladiator, information for Project Gladiator, I can answer any questions regarding that. And the GoFundMe, it was rewritten. The GoFundMe description was rewritten, so it is now much better. It sounds much more professional. It's much more compelling. So definitely be sure to check that out. The link is in the description. At least I'm pretty sure it is. Hold on, let me check. Yeah, the GoFundMe link is in the description if you want to check it out. But we're going to continue to watch this, see how this RFD develops. It is mainly RFD and weaker end inflow, but it may try to spin up. Let me keep a circle on where we're actually watching for rotation. Ooh, that's not a good sign from our reflexivity as far as tornado potential. It's a good sign when it comes to the fact that you don't want tornadoes, but it is much more messy now, and is becoming much more outflow dominant. I don't really see too much of a risk for a tornado coming out of this storm anymore. Now that reflectivity, or now that heavy precipitation is now ahead of it, which will likely lead to more rain cooled air. It's likely going to choke off the inflow and probably significantly decrease any potential that this thing had going for it. So we're probably not going to see too much of a tornado risk as a result of heavy rainfall now being in the inflow there, or at least what existed of the inflow, which really wasn't a lot. But yeah, we'll watch it. We'll see how it evolves. But it's now looking much less probable for tornadoes. Hmm. Yeah, I don't think this is gonna support that much of a tornado risk anymore. I think I'm probably gonna shift my attention down here. This is also definitely more of a damaging wind risk and small hail risk than a tornado risk, but it does look potentially interesting. I am gonna give myself to 10:40. By 10:40 p.m. EST, I will cut off the live stream and go to sleep because I do have school tomorrow and I am tired. But if you guys, again, do have any questions, now is the time to ask them. Please ask any questions that you may have. Questions are heavily encouraged because they keep me going on the live stream without just keeling over and dying due to boredom. But we are watching this special weather statement down to the south, because it does look like it may be trying to develop some rotation here. It does look like it is trying to do the same thing as the one further up to the north, but overall maybe potentially more organized. This is again where we're watching for the potential of tornado development. Another severe thunderstorm warning. See for where. Okay, it's over here. A lot of these supercells towards the Austin region, just the west of Austin, they are really having a hard time trying to develop rotation, but they are definitely producing some hail and some damaging wind gusts, and they were definitely producing some pretty large hail earlier. Okay, that's a much better view. I don't know what radar we were at previously, but now we can see the velocity much better, and it does look like there is much more of an indicator for rotation there. It is really tight along that RFD. But it does look like it is mostly convergence instead of rotation. And again, that northern end there is where we're watching for rotation, further up to the north. But this is very rural area, so I'm very happy for that. If this were to spin up and touch down a tornado, or drop a tornado, it will likely not be too impactful because this is very, very, very rural areas right now. I had this sudden urge to start singing Christmas music for some reason. It's not time yet. Hopefully people can hear me. Hopefully y'all can hear me, because chat's been silent. I don't know if that's... So I don't know if I'm delusional, if chat is frozen for me, or if you guys can't hear me, or if my stream's really just that boring. Probably the last one. Okay, yeah, this is definitely rotation here. We'll definitely see this go tornado warned here in a second. Very, very strong rotation. Again, red's moving away from the radar site. Green's moving towards the radar site. Very strong rotation there. And when you have a little bit of red that's kind of impinging on the greens there, it's kind of a little bit of contamination due to how strong the rotation is. So that may be what we're seeing here. We may be seeing some really strong rotation. Thank goodness that this is very rural areas. Oh, maybe it isn't rural areas. There's no towns or anything in this area. But, yeah, there's a bunch of, like, extremely small, like, villagers and stuff that aren't really, like, big towns, big notable towns that don't even show up on map, really. So I think it's safe to say mainly rural areas, but still, anyone that's in the path could be in a dangerous spot. I could definitely see this being tornado warned here in a moment. We'll give the NWS a minute to see what it does. And I'll see what the next velocity scan gives us. And then as for me hopping off at 10:40 p.m. EST, it is 10:32 right now. 10:32 p.m. EST, so we're like 8 minutes away. If this goes tornado warned in the time that if this goes tornado warning between now and 10:40, then I will not hop off. I'll cover that tornado warning, but then after that tornado warning looks like it isn't gonna do anything after a while, then I will shut the stream off. But if this does go, if this tornado warning, if this severe thunderstorm warning, if this area of rotation does go tornado warn in a second, which it very well could be, especially with the newest velocity scan that you just saw there, I will keep the live stream up to cover it. But still, very, very prominent rotation being indicated there. In fact, I'm probably actually gonna skip a step and hop over from velocity, or move velocity over and then switch to correlation coefficient on the other side. So I do think this is probably going to go tornado warned here in a second. Just give the NWS a moment. I hate how the correlation coefficient, like, sometimes the new quote unquote radar scan will just be making the high areas, or the areas of high correlation coefficient, just slightly lighter, just noticeably lighter, without changing the data whatsoever. So it leads to even bigger gap of uncertainty if a tornado is on the ground or not, if debris is indicated. So again, we do have some rotation that is being indicated there. Definitely could see it go tornado warned here in a second. Where's the radar site? The radar site should be to the south. Yeah. That is perfectly in line with rotation. Red's moving away from the radar site, and green's moving towards the radar site, indicating rotation there. And if we were to draw a line from the radar site, which is off to the southwest here, it would go right through there, indicating that we definitely have rotation. This is not a correlation coefficient job, by the way. This is not associated with rotation. There is not debris being lofted into the atmosphere. Come on, NWS, you can do it. Yeah, especially with that new look. That new look on velocity is very supportive of, it's very indicative, very, very prominent rotation there. I'm surprised it hasn't been tornado warned yet already. Like 2 radar scans back, I'm surprised it hasn't. This is the 3rd one. I'm surprised it wasn't already tornado warned on the 1st one. But this is very prominent rotation, very clear and very indicative of the potential of a tornado and rotation. Maybe the environment. Let me confirm the environment is conducive. Yeah, this is an area where the environment is still conducive and supportive of tornadoes. Come on, NWS. Come on, okay, I just realized you guys can't hear the warning sound. The warning sounds whenever a tornado warning or severe thunderstorm warning is issued. So I just turned that on for you guys. Yep. Just give the NWS a moment. Eventually they'll notice it. I don't want to say too much about it just yet. Just in case I may be saying something wrong. I don't really want to go off talking about the tornado warning or a tornado potentially being possible until we actually get a tornado warning, just in case I may be missing a detail in the NWS isn't issuing a tornado warning for a reason. However, with the newest velocity scan, is still indicating rotation. And in my book, that would be supportive and enough to warrant a tornado warning. All right, it's 10:40. I'll bring it to the next velocity scan. I'll see what the next velocity scan indicates. See if it still indicates rotation or not. And if it downtrends, please NWS, please tell me you can find it. Again, in my book, I definitely see this warranting a tornado warning. I'm, again, kind of surprised it hasn't been warned already. And I'm not making the same mistake as earlier where I accidentally say that, oh, it should have been tornado warned by now. Look at the rotation. On elevated supercells, I've learned my lesson. I figured out the difference between elevated and surface-based a while ago, so I'm not going to make that same mistake again. That's why I don't want to go off on a tangent just yet about the tornado warning, because I don't know if I'm missing something, and if the NWS knows something I don't as far as this tornado warning. But it is 10:41. I'm gonna wait for the next velocity scan, see what it entails, see what new information it brings out. Okay, the newest velocity scan isn't as organized, but it still is indicating some rotation. It is very broad. Still kind of surprised the SPC didn't issue a tornado warning there. Or, sorry, not SPC, the NWS. The SPC does not issue tornado warnings. Yeah, I'm tired, so I do have school tomorrow. It is 10:41, and we got to see the newest velocity scan. Oh, okay, we just got a tornado warning. I guess I'll be sticking around a little bit longer. That tornado warning was definitely needed earlier, much earlier, like 4, 5 radar scans back, when it looked better, when the rotation looked better than what it does now. But we still have rotation. Now we have a tornado warning. This is very rural areas of I think Texas. Yeah, extreme eastern Texas. If you live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. If you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please urge them to get to shelter immediately. A tornado could potentially drop down at any time with this storm. This is mainly rural areas, so there isn't any big towns that are immediately in the danger zone for this. But this is still a dangerous situation for anyone that may live in the warning box area. Again, if you do live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. Tornado could drop at any time with this tornado warning. And if you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please urge them to get to shelter immediately. Correlation coefficient does not indicate a tornado currently on the ground. It does not indicate debris being lofted into the air. But our velocity here is definitely indicating rotation, with reds moving away from the radar site and greens moving towards the radar site, parallel to the radar site. That indicates rotation. Again, we could see this. We could definitely see a tornado come out of this. This is, again, mainly rural areas, so that's good that no big towns are in the immediate danger path of this. Yeah, we could definitely see a tornado drop at any time with this. Rotation is still cranking though. And if you live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. And if you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please urge them to get to shelter immediately. Again, this is potentially a dangerous situation, and tornado could drop at any time with this storm. and make sure you're taking the necessary precautions if you live in the affected area. So we're gonna continue to stick around. See if this see how this tornado warning see how this tornado warning evolves, how it changes over time, and how our rotation is affected. But again, our ingredients are there for tornadoes. Our velocity definitely does indicate rotation. Our correlation coefficient, again, does not indicate debris being lofted into the atmosphere, which is good, indicating that tornado isn't on the ground just yet. But we could see one drop at any time with this. I do think it may need a little bit more work if it wants to try and put a tornado on the ground, but it's definitely very close. You can definitely see a tornado come out of this storm at any time. There are a couple areas of lower correlation coefficient associated with the area of rotation, which is kind of concerning, but it is probably mostly contamination, because this is an area of pretty high precipitation in pretty high, pretty heavy rainfall, and even potentially some pea-sized hail that would potentially sorry, I lost my train of thought. Make any sort of tornado that may develop very rain wrapped and very hard to see, especially with it being nighttime on top of this. But our rotation is becoming less tightened. It's becoming overall weaker, but if we were to see that tighten up more, then we could definitely see a tornado drop from that. And again, tornado warning continues from mainly rural areas of extreme eastern Texas. If you live in the warning box area, please get to shelter immediately. If you know anyone that lives in the warning box area, please urge them to get to shelter immediately. There's no indicator of a tornado currently being on the ground as of right now. However, one could drop at any time with a storm. Our velocity, our rotation is kind of weakening down a little bit there. And with how it looks now, I am going from kind of surprised to more angry that the NWS didn't really issue a tornado warning earlier. That was kind of goofy of them, because rotation was definitely much better, like 4 radar scans, for a total of 4 radar scans until they issued the tornado warning. Thankfully, it didn't go at least it didn't go completely unnoticed, and they did issue a tornado warning, which I am happy about. Not happy in a sense of the fact that there's a tornado warning, but happy in the fact in the sense that the NWS finally caught on and found the tornado warning, or found the area of rotation and tornado warned it. As far as correlation coefficient goes, it's going to be a pain in the rear end to really see any sort of low correlation coefficient or a indicator of debris being lofted into the atmosphere, because it's very contaminated. And our rotation is still there. It is much more broad, and it is much weaker. But if we were to see that tighten up, we could definitely see a tornado potentially drop out of that. I want to see what our next velocity scan looks like. Our next velocity scan looks like it is a little bit better now. It is still broad, but it is strengthening a little bit and is much more tightened now. and still capable of producing a tornado. So again, if you do live in the affected area, if you live in this warning box, again, the storm could produce a tornado at any time. If you live in this affected area, please get to shelter immediately. If you know anyone that lives in this affected area, please urge them to get to shelter immediately. And yeah, it's that we could again definitely see a tornado potentially come out of this. It's definitely not out of the question with this. Again, I do think velocity does need a little bit more work, but definitely getting there. Still capable of producing a tornado. And if you guys have questions, please ask. Please feel free to ask any questions that you may have pertaining to this tornado warning and the severe risk. Because the main reason that I die of boredom on these live streams is the lack of questions. So if you guys have questions, same now or forever hold your truth. I think that's the saying. But again, tornado warning continues for mainly rural areas of extreme eastern Texas. Rotation is continuing. I'm going to wait for the next velocity scan to see how that evolves. And our correlation coefficient, it's a mess. It isn't really, it's not going to be able to indicate any sort of like debris being lofted in the atmosphere because of how contaminated it is right now. But we definitely have some broad but strong and some pretty decent rotation here. That could definitely be supportive of the potential of a tornado. The newest velocity scan is still pretty broad. Did look like it weakened down a little bit, but it is still fairly similar as far as strength. It is still fairly broad though, but it's still capable of producing a tornado. Again, if you live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. If you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please urge them to get to shelter immediately. Again, a tornado is very possible with a storm. It could drop at any time. And then again, any questions are encouraged. Okay, yeah, I closed my eyes a little bit because I'm kind of tired and I just freaked myself out by accident. Sometimes whenever I'm tired like this, like my brain will just generate the scariest imagery imaginable. And that's just what happened. So now I'm a little freaked out. But again, tornado warning continues for mainly rural areas of extreme eastern Texas. If you live in the affected area, please get to shelter immediately. If you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please urge them to get to shelter immediately. Again, a tornado could drop at any time with this storm. Newest correlation coefficient scan indicates no apparent debris being lofted into the atmosphere. Overall, no tornado currently being on the ground. However, again, we could see a tornado potentially drop down at any time with this storm. Velocity, I'm gonna wait for the new velocity scan, but correlation is just so contaminated, it's kind of hard to tell whatsoever. if it's debris or not. But it likely isn't, especially by the look of our velocity. Our rotation couplet or velocity couplet is very broad. It isn't tight whatsoever. If we want to see a tornado come out of this, it will likely need to tighten up a little bit more. But yeah, we'll continue to watch this and see how it goes. See how it progresses from here. But again, I'm going to wait for the next velocity scan. I may miss it because I am going to close my eyes a little bit because I am extremely tired. I am going to do this actually. I'm going to turn on news scan, audible alert. If I can figure out how. Oh, here we go. Then I'll switch it to a single panel of our velocity. So now it will alert me when we get that new velocity scan. But I'm just going to wait for that and close my eyes a little bit. Sorry if this stream is boring and silent. I understand why it kind of sounds that way. Because I am dragging right now. To tell you the truth, I'm dragging. But again, tornado warning continues for mainly rural areas of extreme eastern Texas. If you know anyone that lives in the warning area, if you live in the warning area, please get to shelter immediately. If you know anyone that lives in the warning area, please urge them to get to shelter immediately. I didn't get alerted of the new velocity scan, but I did watch it update, so I do know that it did happen, and it is still mostly identical. It is still rotating. It is still very broad, and it will need to tighten up if we want to see a tornado out of it. So there's probably not a tornado on the ground as of right now. It's also extremely cold in my room. Two minutes, I'm gonna shut off the stream. I'm not gonna stream past 11. One minute remaining. So I'm going to say my goodbyes. Again, tornado warning continues for extreme eastern areas and mainly rural areas of extreme eastern Texas here. Again, a tornado could drop down at any time with this tornado warning. However, that seems kind of improbable with how velocity looks. It will need some work if it wants to drop a tornado, but definitely still see some tornado possibility out of that. If you live in the affected area, or if you know anyone that lives in the affected area, please make sure that either you or them get to shelter immediately. And definitely make sure you're paying attention to the weather this afternoon into the very early morning of tomorrow, as we could not only see the potential for a couple tornadoes, some of which could definitely be strong, especially with how the environment looks. There are other people that are currently covering the severe weather. If you are interested on watching them, uh, there are, I think, a couple channels. Uh, I don't know if they are streaming or not, but there are a couple channels I suggest you check out as far as that sort of thing. There is Max Velocity. There's Ryan Hall, y'all. There's who else? Um, I think, not sure who else was streaming. But there are a couple severe weather streamers that are likely covering this right now. And I recommend their streams if you want to continue watching this sort of thing. But I am going to go to bed now because I'm tired. I have school tomorrow, and I do not want to be dragging tomorrow as well. So I'm going to get off now. I hope everyone has an amazing week, and if you live in the affected area, please make sure you're staying weather alert.